All right, welcome back to the bench. Here we go. We're going to get started. So this is our project piece that we're working on. This is a Ping A blade. You can see here it's got some nice wear and tear on it, right? These old Pings, you can pick them up on eBay, like I said, 10, 15 bucks. Get them pretty cheap and you can make them look pretty damn good. Two of the challenges with Pings is one, getting this pocket cleaned out. And two, removing it from the head, removing the shaft from the head. Ping loves to make this hard, especially on their old putters. But if we do it right and you follow, you're going to end up with this finish. And you can see, we can probably see the camera in this. Yeah, there it is right there. You can see the camera. Now, obviously, this one has a couple extra things on it. We did some pitting, some embellishment there, and we also did a nice kind of braided, serrated top on the front. We're not going into that into this video. You're just going to learn how to get it to that beautiful, polished finish. And then if you want to go and do stuff like this, I'll show you how to do that, and that's pretty easy. So the first thing you want to do is remove the head from the shaft. Now this is optional. I highly suggest you do this for one simple reason. It is just easier to work with and polish and do all of that cleaning with this guy gone, okay? Now here's the problem with the Pings. Your old Ping shaft, you may get lucky, right? All you need to use, just a little quick heat on it. Just put a little quick heat right down here. Maybe, 5-10 seconds of it. And if you're lucky, you should be able to just twist that head right off, no problem. Don't use a lot of force because these necks, right, these are not new clubs, they're older. These necks could have some stress and you don't want to bend the loft or the lie of the putter, and you definitely don't want to break off the gooseneck here. So that will typically do it. Now if you get this in here and it is not turning, it is solid, hard, or maybe it's turning and you hear like it's like skipping, it's like and it's not really moving, you've got a ball bearing in your shaft. And this is what Ping did that drives me absolutely bonkers. Let's see, we'll grab one here. So if we look at this one that we pulled off of our answer, you can see right in the bottom of there is a ball bearing, right? It's in the shaft. It won't come out through this tip. It's put in through the butt. So we have another one here, and I'll show you. That's it. That's what you're dealing with. This ball bearing that basically goes through the shaft, right? It's placed in there, and it creates this almost, you can actually see, it's hard to see probably on camera, but there's a slight bulge in the shaft here where this went in, basically giving them an extra mechanical connection. Because I mean, you have to think at the time epoxy was not what it is now, and you look at the small amount that was holding this on, and it's not a lot. You give it a good couple wraps, especially that day in the age where greens were cut at like a 7 or an 8 on the stimp. And you don't have these nice pacey greens that we have now. You'd have to give them a little bit of a whack. And over time, that could have compromised the epoxy bond here. So this was their extra set of protection. I like the idea. It's just a pain in the ass now if you want to take it off. So you have a couple options. You can use temperature. So these were essentially cooled down. They were frozen. They were thrown down into the shaft, ramrodded in there a little bit, and then heated up with a gun. And what that gun did is expanded the metal. It created that bulge and that extra mechanical connection to keep that head in place on the shaft. So you can use the reverse process. You can freeze it down, okay, shrink it, and then hopefully with a little bit of light heat, it may allow you to wiggle this loose. The second option is you just get lucky and maybe it's in there, maybe it's not in there, maybe it has already come out. I've never seen one come out, but I guess it's possible. So you may just get lucky, or may not have one. The third option, and this is the one that I end up using the most, is we have to ram this out. So how do you ram this out of a hosel when it's compressed that way? You've got to go from the bottom, so from here, and push it that way. So these putter heads are fairly soft. Get yourself a drill. I like using a center punch. I will center it right over the middle of this, so right here in the middle. Give myself a little point where I can start my drilling. Like so. We've got our little center punch right here. And then I'll drill it out using a 9/64 drill bit. What that'll do is it'll open it up, and you'll end up with something that looks like this. Goes all the way through. Now that will allow you to grab a punch, go in through the bottom, and loosen that ball up. So you're just going to put that, the shaft's still on, loosen the ball, punch it through, the ball will roll somewhere down the shaft. You'll know when you get it. And then you can go ahead, apply your heat, and remove your head. So those are the couple ways you can go about doing it. I hope for you guys you get lucky that you don't have to deal with this ball bearing, but you know, you're probably going to have to. All right, so let's talk about how we're going to put this club all back together. So your shaft, I like using the original shaft here. You can see it's got the graphic on there. It's very hard to get replacements for these, so if at all possible, try to preserve it as much as you can. So some of these shafts can look a little bit old, so get a 3M pad, scuff it up a little bit, get any of that rust that may be on there, put some nice flitz polishing on it, and it'll be looking pretty good. So assembling the club, we want to get this set up, get the tip set up for our epoxy. So we're going to do a dry fit here. And what I like to do is, knowing that the tip of that shaft needs to be abraded, I'll grab some painter's tape. I'll put it right where the bottom of the shaft meets the top of the hosel. And what this will do is it's going to give me basically a safety zone to know exactly where we need to scuff up and abrade the tip of that shaft. So as we take the head off here, you can see that exposed area. I can go at that with the sandpaper and not worry about coming above the hosel line. So just using an 80 grit sandpaper, we're just going to put it on there. We're going to scuff up that tip a little bit. Just make sure that we have those little grooves and stuff for the epoxy to set in. So now that we've taken that tape off, you can see that clear line where our abrasion ends and our nice polished shaft begins. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? This hole at the bottom of the hosel. There's a couple ways we can go about addressing this. We can fill it in after we're done using a brass rod that you can get at a hobby store. But what we also want to do is make sure that the bottom of our shaft here is also plugged, because what's going to happen is you're going to get that that epoxy is going to start to leak. So you can use a shaft plug there and just sit it into the club head, or you can use a bore through pin. I like these better because they're friction fit, and you can sit that in there really nice and not have to worry about it backing out. Put it in there, give it a nice pop down, and then just go ahead and get a hacksaw, trim that tip off, sand it flat, and what's going to happen is it's going to allow none of that epoxy to go back into your shaft, which is what we want. We want it to come out of that bottom hole. Plus you're also going to have a nice flat surface at the bottom of your shaft. So when you go to seat this into the club head, you're going to get a basically adhesion all the way around the walls of the side of the shaft as well as the bottom. So mixing our epoxy, I like to use a long cure epoxy for this job. I think that the short cure just doesn't do what we need it to do. So I'll use a 24-hour cure. You don't need a lot, right? Because we don't have a lot of surface area to cover. One thing I will do, however, is I always use shafting beads in my epoxy. Some people like it, some people don't. It's a personal preference, but for me it is always a key component when I am reshafting golf clubs. So we're just going to go ahead and mix all this stuff together. The other good thing about the Long Cure is as you're mixing this, you've got a little bit more working time. So if you forget to do something, which I have forgotten to do, you don't have to worry about it. Right, so we abraded the tip of the shaft. I forgot we need to abrade the inside of that hosel as well. It's pretty shiny, pretty smooth. We want to make sure we've got two rough, grabby surfaces for that epoxy. So we'll just go ahead, we'll sand the inside of that. You're not taking material away, so don't worry about ruining the dimensions of the shaft or it not fitting it too loose or whatnot. It's not going to happen. You're just scuffing it up a little bit, so now you've got an even better surface for that epoxy to adhere to. And then, as always, like you should be doing when you are reshafting, grab some acetone, clean out your surfaces, make sure they're grease free, dirt free. This is looking pretty good. We'll hit the tip here too. This will just give you one extra layer of protection before you put that glue on, that nothing is going to contaminate that glue bond. So let's go ahead, we'll put some in the hosel here. Just get it all the way around. We want to get it on the bottom too, because again we have that flat surface on the bottom of our shaft that we put in with our bore plug. So we'll get that on there, and then we'll grab our shaft and we will make sure that we get it all the way around the side walls as well as on the bottom. So we'll go ahead, we'll sit these together, mate them up, use a twisting fashion to get them all together. Once we've got it in as far as I can go with my hands, I'm going to go ahead off screen and tamp that down so it sits in there nice and tight. And then we'll go ahead, clean up the leakage. All right, we're all set. The one thing I will tell you guys is if you've got your label already on your shaft, make sure that it's lined up when you're seating that shaft in there. So one last wipe here, making sure we get all our epoxy fingerprints off, anything that may have leaked through in that process. Just use a little acetone, or isopropyl alcohol actually works even better to clean that off. And then just set it. We're going to set it for 24 hours. We're not going to touch it. We're going to let it do its thing, and it's going to be good to go. This thing looks great. So like I said, that little hole at the bottom that you may have or may not have, go to the hobby store, get some brass rods. You can hammer them in there. It'll flatten them out. You can polish them up. You won't even notice it's there. You could use JB Weld if you want to. Or you could just leave it the way it is. I guess it'll be fine either way. It's on the bottom. It's really not noticeable. But once that grip comes in, we can grip this guy up, and it's going to look pretty nice. I'm kind of excited to get this out here, see how it feels. So until next time, guys, make sure that you swing as hard as possible, just in case you hit the ball. God bless America. G2 out.